Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call this Works Committee meeting to order, and let's start with a roll call. This is so exciting. Are we waiting for someone?
Just waiting on Councillor Nicholson.
I'm pretty sure he's here. No problem. It happens to us all. All right. So thank you very much, folks. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing and can we fix it in the minutes? Yeah, we'll make sure everyone knows you're here. Thanks. All right, and just I'll repeat this. Any declarations of interest? Seeing and hearing none. All right, and then we've got the minutes from May 8th, 2024. Someone move this? Okay, moved by Councillor Marin Pietri, seconded by Councillor Makahi. All in favor? That's carried. Now we're down to 6.1. We have a delegation from Wendy Bracken, and she's from Clarington. And this is in regards to the DYAC the 2023 Q3 and Q4 MISA reports. Go ahead. And you've got 5 minutes.
Good morning, Works Committee members and staff. This morning I am speaking to the MISA 2023 Q3 and Q4 reports, which became available to the public only recently. MISA issues need to be addressed now, and these reports provide further evidence that the MISA concerns and issues are ongoing, well-founded, and have not been addressed thus far. So today, I hope you will recognize that they need to be resolved before and if Durham moves forward with its proposal to burn more garbage. Here is figure 1 from the Q3 2023 MISA report showing dioxin furan concentrations over the 3 roughly 1-month sampling periods. See how widely the dioxin furan concentrations vary from month to month, particularly for boiler 1 in blue. It's visual information that's consistent with the plethora of evidence previously provided to you that MISA results and dioxins and furans emissions vary over time, especially during times of other than normal operating conditions, and that short-term 12-hour stack testing done for dioxins and furans cannot be considered representative of the dioxin furan emissions for the rest, 99.5% plus of the operating time. This section in the Q3 report suggests a theory that the elevated result in Run 87, that was the higher blip there, might be attributable to issues identified with the MISA at a much later date. But Run 88 followed the elevated result and had no issues. The suggested theory does not appear to make sense. On page 8 of the report, you can see the stack test results on the left of the versus the 3 MISA results over the Q3 period on the right. Again, here is further evidence that dioxin furan concentrations during short-term stack tests, 12 hours, at ideal conditions can be very different from MISA concentrations based on much longer sampling periods over varying conditions. Actual dioxin furan emissions over the year cannot be generally assumed to be represented by source test results. This slide shows the ambient air concentrations over the same quarter, quarter 3. It's interesting to note the August ambient air concentrations were the highest in quarter 3, occurring roughly at the same time the MISA concentrations were highest for boiler 1. Now I'm going to move on to the quarter 4 report. See that there are no results for 2 monthly runs, Run 90 and 91, stating that the lack of results was due to a MISA malfunction in boiler 1. Here is the explanation, noting that a MISA components needed servicing and/or replacement. These latest months of loss of data add to the long list of months for which data has not been provided, is not available, and/or invalidated. Reading and comparing European accounts of EMISA reporting, Durham withholding the first 4 years of data stands out. Facilities install EMISA and get right on with reporting the results. There's no 4-year delay, citing lack of correlation with stack results. It's absurd and worrisome that this has happened. If everything is done properly and well, then the data should be provided, and if there are questions, they should be answerable. Furthermore, as in all other DYEC reports, there should be an independent third party to produce the EMISA report and to ensure that all underlying reports that taxpayers are funding are included as attachments or appendices. Such traceability and transparency is not currently happening with EMISA, and it's time this committee takes action. Durham has put Covanta in charge of the EMISA reporting. They receive lab results, do the calculations, and help develop the invalidation protocol. This is not appropriate as Covanta has a conflict of interest. Here's the updated list of the months and months of dioxin-furan EMISA data that has been invalidated, omitted, or missing from 2020 onward, and now includes the 2023 Q4 emissions.
Just so you know, you've got 15 seconds on this one.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask you today is you've received Clarington correspondence on the EMISA. Please do not receive that correspondence for information. Either require staff to report on this, provide updated reports prior to the ECA application moving forward, and if you can't, please refer the EMISA Clarington correspondence to council.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much. Any questions on this delegation? She's doing another one in 10 seconds. No questions? Okay, she has 5 more minutes on the next one, so. We see your hand, but not electronic. Go ahead,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Yamato.
Through you to the delegate. So you were talking about 2 options. Which of your options would you feel is best? Because I don't want to see this just received for information, because I know what received for information means. It just goes away in a black hole. I want to see some sort of action, because Clarington, in my discussions with certain members of Clarington Council, they want to see some sort of action from the region, and I want to provide more than what is just being suggested here. So you mentioned a report to staff, and the second point was just referring it to council. What do you see better? I see getting more information from staff as a better way forward, but I'd like to know from the 2 choices that you've presented what you would see as the best option. Thank you.
Well, I think you could get more information from staff. What Clarington is asking for is what I've been asking for a very long time as well. And that is that this EMISA data is paid for by taxpayers. And it should never have been withheld for the first 4 years. And then because if it's all about transparency. If everything is going well, as everyone is saying, it is being projected to the public, then there should be no problem providing that. And if there are questions, they should be answerable. It's such a reasonable thing to ask for. From 2020 onward, the problem has been that there's an invalidation protocol, and results get invalidated. And that protocol was developed by Covanta and the regions. And yet we don't even see those results. They're just gone. Don't know what happened to them. And what is also extremely concerning, I'm going to speak to you about the soil monitoring report. Just like the other reports that are done for the DYEC, they're done by independent third parties. And attached to the end of those reports are the lab reports and everything that supports the information in the report, which is the way it should be. You're paying for those reports. Why they're not attached is a mystery, and it's a traceability and transparency issue for the region. And
So just 1 second, if you don't mind. There was a question on what you asked for a number of different things. Which direction would you like to go? I don't think we've received an answer to that yet.
Okay, so obviously I'd like you to take the actions that Clarington is asking for. I think it should go a step further, that there should be independent 3-party production of these AMISA reports. And so I hope that that will get the support of this Works Committee. If that doesn't happen, then at least ask for an update report on the AMISA before the ECA commences. That's the next option. And so that may be what you want, is more information. At the very least, don't just dismiss this. Don't just receive for information. At the very least, this would be the third lowest option, refer it to council. Thank you so much for the question.
Are there any further questions before she goes into our next delegation? Seeing and hearing none, go ahead.
So now I'm going to speak to you on a report that just recently became available to the public, and that's the 2023 Soil Monitoring Report. Important for you to understand that now soil monitoring is only done once every 3 years. So what you're going to see is that this report shows that there's a serious need that an update report be provided prior to ECA application. The results demonstrate this. And it's really important for you to understand that the environmental screening report done to increase throughput to 160 did not evaluate soil and other environmental loading. That was not considered. The last update you've received on the 160, and it was about air quality mainly, was in 2019. Many things have changed. More reports showing concerns have come forward. Better health and environmental monitoring is being required in other jurisdictions. And the Regional Council has an obligation under the host community agreement with Clarington to look at better and more comprehensive monitoring and pollution control before any increase to throughput. What informs the soil plan, soil testing reports is a soil testing plan that was done back at the time of the EA. The current revision is what I've got here, and in that soil testing plan that directs everything is that it states soil was one of the most important media considered in the human health and ecological risk assessment due to the emissions outfall from the DYC. And I'm quoting directly, the primary source of deposition to soil are the facility emissions. The main source of emissions is at 87.6 meter tall main stack. Right now, the soil monitoring is being reduced to only 2 locations. The downwind station is what you see at the blue square, that's Rundle Road. The yellow box you see is at Curtis Water Pollution Control Plant, and the red box is the incinerator stack. Difficult to see. So what was found in the 2023 report was that concentrations of dioxins and furans in soil measured during that sampling event increased at both upwind and downwind to historical new record highs. I'm concentrating in this slide on the downwind concentrations. And what I've provided for you, except for the very leftmost column, which was not provided in the report, everything else comes directly from that most recent report, is just an easier way to look at it. And the background that I'm using in the first column comes from the EA. The background mean concentration that was measured in the EA, there were 17 soil sampling stations. The next columns from pre-construction 2013 onward come from your report, and they were all done at the same location, Rundle Road. You can see that the 2023 downwind concentrations are more than double pre-DYEC levels. That's a 114% increase in dioxin and furan soil concentration. That's really important, okay? Because the HERA, the Human Health Ecological Risk Assessment, that was 2.4 right now. It only assessed, it used a background of 1.76, so it was less than what is happening now. And the HERA also concluded that after 30 years of operation, the soil concentrations of dioxins and furans were estimated to increase by 20 and 57%, 20 for normal, 57% for process upset. And right now, that was in 30 years. In 8 years, we're at 2.4, and that is a 114% increase. There are some unsupportable statements in the 2023 soil report where they're basically saying you can't attribute this to the facility, but then they note that they're only looking at the April 2023 source test, which I've just explained why a source test isn't representative, and some ambient air. And the ambient air quality data, remember, for dioxins and furans, it's only 1 out of every 24 days, so only 4% of the operational time. So again, I want you to remember this number, 2.4. That's where we're at right now with soil at the downwind station.
You've got
So-
10 seconds, just so you know.
Okay, so again, this needs to be addressed. You have to look at the Clarington report on updating, providing an update report prior to ECA application. That includes looking at this sort of thing, environmental monitoring. So please require the staff to provide that update report prior to the ECA. Please take that action today. If you can't do that, then at least refer the Clarington correspondence, this time the Clarington correspondence on the 160 update, to council. But you should be taking the action. There's enough there. The human health.
So you are significantly over time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, any questions? Can you hit your button there? Thanks, Councillor. Go ahead.
I just want to get this on record. The increase in the load amount is cumulative. Each year, furans and dioxins leave the stack, they settle on the neighboring lands. So would it be fair to indicate that unless somebody does a cleanup, we're going to see this 2.4 number only increase with further usage? Is that correct?
Yeah, and that is actually acknowledged right in the soil testing plan, that they assume that after 30 years of operation, it just stays there for the next 70 years. Okay,
But they said in 30 years, we'd be under 2.
correct.
8 years, we're at 2.4. So for the next 22 years, using that extrapolation, we're going to be about 5.6. I'm just using the standard extrapolation for 8 years.
Well, yes, it's going to accumulate over time, and how things will change over time is also going to be a factor. And remember, right now you're looking at increasing the amount of garbage burned, and the laws of physics apply. The law of conservation of mass. The more mass you burn, the more mass is emitted.
Okay. The other question I have is, do you consider the 2 test sites sufficient, or should we be testing closer to the residential communities as well, in both Curtis and Southern Oshawa, just to get an idea of what the loading is beyond these 2 sites? It could be elsewhere. I'm using the wind carries the furans and dioxins. Could they be carrying it further
Right.
westward than this site, and it's like flying over it and it's being deposited at higher levels elsewhere?
Absolutely, I do think so. And I also think that you should be doing what is happening in Europe. And what is happening in Europe is that they're increasing the biomonitoring because they understand that soil it says right in your own soil testing report, it's the most important media, one of the most important media, because soil is how the things bioaccumulate in our agricultural produce. And so they test backyard chicken eggs, they test moss, pine needles, the things that show uptake. And that is something, Dr. Kyle weighed in on this back, if you'll remember,
I was
back
there,
in
yep.
2009, he looked at biomonitoring and he thought, based on what was given to him, he was okay with so far. Dr. Kyle needs to see these soil testing monitoring reports, and this should not be in your shoulders too, to make decisions on health, because the input into the HERA was 1.76. Okay, that was the upper confidence limit of the mean. So they put in 1.76 as the baseline input for soil, and that feeds all the other calculations. Feeds how they predict loading to humans, and even back then, risks were identified for infants and toddlers. And so now you've got higher values. So this absolutely requires heavy thought. And it requires a medical opinion, which is what is in Clarington's correspondence. They asked for that, a written opinion. And I hope that council will, I hope that this committee will take action to
Thank you.
endorse that. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this is clerk, Madam Clerk, do you want to just let me know if this is in order? We often hear from residents, but not from staff on situations like this. Wondering if anyone has any questions to Ramesh or to other staff about this, just so we can have the other side of this. Councillor Nicholson, let's go first, Councillor Manpietri. Go ahead, Tito.
I'm just wondering, we're going to be dealing with the correspondence. Would you like us to, as chair, ask those questions when the correspondence is in front of us? Or
That
work better?
probably makes sense. Sure,
Okay.
let's do that.
Because I just want to defer the time to the delegates so that they're able to provide us with their feedback and their input, and then we can address the correspondence. if that's
Okay, again,
Okay.
that's,
At that point, if you could mark me down, I do have some questions.
okay, sounds good. And the correspondence is next anyway, so it's, we're getting pretty close there. Thank you. All right, so let's move on to 7.1A, and this is correspondence from the municipality of Clarington from May 28th. And again, it's in regards to the York Durham Energy Center and the throughput up to 160,000 tons. So first would be Councillor Manpietri. Do you want to hit your button again? So, no, it is, but you, so again, not excluded, but Councillor Manpietri was first on the list after your hand, right? And then, but again, we can go to Councillor Nicholson first.
That's fine.
Go ahead, sir.
I guess my question wasn't so much to the motion, which will be deal with under correspondence. My question is to staff, which is, given that this information has come forward and that our projections are being far exceeded, why aren't we doing more testing? Because, it's like asking someone to buy a car, but you won't give them a safety check.
So let's go to our commissioner. Go ahead, Ramesh.
Yeah, through the chair to the councillor, I'm not sure what we mean by non-compliant. Like, we are still compliant in terms of stack testing, which is the one that's required as per the ECA application. And we remain compliant, and we do this annually, goes to MECP. And all this is going through MECP, like including the 140 to 160. So I'm not sure what we mean by non-compliance. Sorry if that's the term I
Well,
heard.
if you, let me put it this way then. If over half your tests are not released, how do I know you're compliant?
The compliance testing is once a year. That is
Okay.
released to the public, to committee, council, to MECP, and so on. What we are talking about is AMISA testing, which is a monthly sampling, which is not a compliance test. It's an operational tool, and that's been described in many reports by my predecessors as a diagnostics tool that allows the operations to tweak the parameters and so on. It is not even an ECA condition for compliance. It's a monitoring tool, it's a diagnostics tool. So I want to make sure that it's not interpreted as not compliant.
Well, and I appreciate that, like I do. The problem is, with the limited testing that you do, I have trouble accepting that it's compliant. My bottom line is, and I'll be respectful when I say this, I don't think you know. Because I don't think you want to know. That's why the testing we're doing is bare minimum. Despite all the promises made in 2009 that we were going to have the world-class testing system and state-of-the-art, we don't. The second question I want to put to you is, now that the information on the soil testing has been released, and it shows that we're well beyond our 30-year projection in 8 years, are you going to then now suggest further testing and on further sites to ensure that we have a better picture of what is the soil impact from the release of contaminants through the stack?
Yeah,
Why don't you answer the first question?
testing.
Well, so is it we were promised state-of-the-art testing, and the interpretation from Councillor Nicholson is that we don't have state-of-the-art testing. Why don't you just first answer that? Again, I went through a bunch of reports last night. There's 800
It's a
pages.
statement because I was there and nobody else here was.
Fair enough. Just, I want to make sure that was answered, Counselor. Thank you.
That's a factual statement. I didn't make it up.
I'm not debating it. I want the question answered. That's all.
Yeah, yes, through the chair to the counselor. Yes, we did promise, I have looked at the reports. It is state-of-the-art control and monitoring systems in terms of sampling once a year, which is as per the ECA application. It's no different than any other industry that operates it. So, we are following all the ECA parameters, which is to do a very methodical sampling once a year, which takes place over a 2 to 3 day period. We report it. We continue to be below 64 or 60, I think that's the metric, and that's happening every year. In terms of soil monitoring, again, it's still within compliance. Yes, I understand it's higher compared to our previous 3-year report. But again, samples are always going to have noise in it because soil it's no different than the ambient air monitoring report we got about 2 months ago. There are many other sources that contribute to it. Again, I'm going to look to Andrew. I believe this is all shared with MECP. They review it, and no different than the 140 to 160 ton application. They have deemed.
Let me ask you this for clarification, if I could, then, please. In 2009, we promised state-of-the-art testing. The parameters in most of the industry have changed since 2009, over the next 15 years. Have we updated our testing protocols to meet the new technologies and new opportunities to do testing and the new science has come out? Or are we still working back in the Middle Ages of incinerator testing?
In my new role here, I've had a couple of tours of the plant, and I've talked to HDR, I've talked to other consultants. I'm being assured what we have is state-of-the-art monitoring system. Anything that's more advanced would require a whole reconfiguration, which is what we would probably see if we ever go to 250. There's 140 to 160 is not adding boiler units. It's not adding process trains. It's basically a few days in a year. Instead of sending the over tonnage to landfill, we are going to be able to process it here. So therefore, short of doing a major reconfiguration and whatnot, which would likely take place when we truly expand the plant. We are not talking about expanding the plant at all here. It's all existing equipment, existing number of process trains. It's basically what was approved in the original ECA, but you're going to do another 10, 15 days per year instead of sending them to landfill. So in terms of adding new technologies, new equipment, yes, we do have our eyes open, for if there's anything that comes our way to make things even better, we would come to committee and council. If it's feasible within the context of the existing plant. But if it's going to require an expansion, that would have to be a totally new EA, which we have acknowledged. And we've done this over the last 3 years, and it's MECP looked at all the reasons that the elevation requests have asked for this to be bumped to a full EA, and they have given a clear ruling. This doesn't require a full EA because you're not doing any plant expansion. It's an existing equipment. They've seen all the reports. They've seen the incremental impact of going another 20,000 tons per year. And they have said, you can move on with the application.
No, I understand that with all due respect, I didn't drink the Kool-Aid in 2009, and I'm not drinking it in 2024 either. My concern isn't about the operation of the incinerator, because that seems to be the priority of everybody at the region. My concern is the community and the environment around the plants not being negatively impacted by our discharges. That's the bottom line. I have 48,000 people in my ward who live just downwind from this facility. I'm going to get another 15,000 people in the next 10 years. I want to be able to say to them that we've done the appropriate testing to the best of our ability, and we're confident there's no impact, or we're confident that it's acceptable. Trying to simply say we do one, with all due respect, and I don't mean this to be difficult to staff, but I said this in 2009 and I'll say it today. One test a year is absurd. It's like saying I want to buy a car, so I tested on Tuesday, it worked. On Wednesday, the brakes fall apart, but we're going to keep relying on Tuesday's test. We test 2 sites, neither in residential communities. We have provincial parks, we have wildlife areas, we have residential communities that are growing all around this site, but we haven't expanded our test parameters. Is there anything in the current approval that makes it illegal for us to increase the number of tests we do? Because my understanding is not. It's our choice not to do the test, not that there's something that says we can't. Am I correct in my understanding?
So let's go to Andrew for this one.
So just to add to Ramesh, so we do the second source test as a voluntary measure. So I think that would be an example of something that we do above and beyond the ministry requirements. In terms of the AMISA system itself, it's, to my understanding, the only unit of its kind on waste energy facility in North America. There is a few more in Europe, but we're the only one doing the MISA in North America. And the intent of the system is, just as you say, to look at it, month to month, so we're not waiting 6 months before we get the next sample results to see what could be going on at the facility. That's the operational, the guidelines, so that the operators have the feedback and can make any adjustments needed, and quite frankly, look to see if there's anything that could be going wrong. I think in the initial report, we talked about the purpose of MISA, and one of the things that detected early on, there was a slightly higher level than we'd typically seen. They went back, looked at the air pollution control system, and saw that there was an issue with sort of an entanglement on one of the gravimetric hoppers for activated carbon. They were able to look at that, diagnose it by walking down the system, and make that change rather than waiting to see a source test report that showed a similar result. And so, to your question on, are we still state of the art in testing? Yes. Our limits are still comparable or lower to many other jurisdictions. I see the U.S. is looking to go from 30 nanograms, so 30,000 picograms, down to I think 7.2. We're sitting at 60. So they're sitting over 7,000. We're sitting at 60. When you look at in particular with the AMISA, when you look at the US EPA data on putting those systems in place and looking at the relative accuracy, they're testing at 1,000 picograms versus our limit, and they're seeing plus or minus 5 to 10%, which is multiple times our limit in some case. And typically the accuracy of these systems, they talk about a limit of quantification to around 31, 32. We're below that, so the noise to data ratio gets high. So those levels start to just get fluctuating, and there's not a lot of the confidence decreases in what that actual specific number is. But the fact is, we're so low, we're having trouble detecting it in most cases.
Please correct me. Who does the testing?
So
It's the company, right?
so like all other operational test points, it's the company.
So they got a vested interest in not reporting anything that's over the limit. And then who receives the data? Us. We have a vested interest in making sure this place continues to operate. Why is this testing not done at a third party? By a third party, so we have a totally independent test rather than doing it in-house where there's vested interest involved in this situation?
Because it's an operational parameter. So all the other operational parameters are done by the operator. The AMISA isn't a compliance point. They bring in third-party consultants to do the source testing, which is the compliance point, and they do the accuracy testing as well. But for the operational point, this system is sitting there, month in, month out. It does, when there are plant interruptions, things have to be adjusted. They're inspecting the system regularly to, replace components as there's issues. But at the end of the day, it's supposed to be an operational, bellwether to see what the plant, could be doing in the future, and that's where it should be sitting.
We set that parameter at the region, did we not?
Correct.
We made it a company-driven process. We could have made it an independent process. And given this new data that shows we're exceeding the projections in 2009 that were outlined there, why are we not then shifting it from an operator responsibility and even from a Durham staff responsibility to an independent analysis so that we have data that's being analyzed by people who don't have a vested interest in the operation of the plant?
Andrew, before you answer, let me just.
I'm just trying to understand why we don't do it independent.
No, and I heard your question. I just want it broken into two pieces. We're talking about AMISA first. Why don't you answer who looks after AMISA? We know that's internal. But then why don't you talk about the soil testing separate? Because that's the one that's over. There's over expectations.
Roll over.
Thank you.
So Soil testing is done by a third-party region retained consultant, so RWI in this case that does the ambient air sampling as well. In terms of that result, so I would note at the downwind station, there was also a duplicate sample taken. The duplicate sample came back half of the reported sample, just again showing that variability in the media and in the test results. And I think, in terms of historical, all of those sites have seen readings, over 1. In another test result, are we going to see a continued trend or are we going to see it back down? We don't know at this point, and it is sort of a trend analysis and the soils data is submitted to the ministry for comment. We have not at this point received any comments or concerns from the ministry with respect to that reporting of the data.
And you never will, because their standards are abysmal. So my concern is, I use this as a political term, so it's not personal to anybody. Relying on the Jamaica bobsled team as state of the art for the industry doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's a great movie, but they finished 38th out of 38. My concern is, given that the technology has changed, given that the standards in most state-of-the-art testing facilities have changed, and we're not going to rely on the American standards, they're the worst in the world. They're not our comparator. Our comparator should be Sweden. Our comparator should be Denmark. Our comparator should be Germany. My question is, why are we not, after 15 years of operation, now going back and looking at, have we adjusted our testing protocols to address the new information we're receiving? And isn't it prudent as a municipality to always review your testing protocols and adjust them based on changing technologies?
So through the chair, we did, I believe it was 2 years ago, review the European Union BAT standards, and that was appended to one of the source test reports. We are still, in keeping with what the current best available technology is. I think in several cases, other jurisdictions are continuing to catch up. When the facility was built, it was at or below kind of the lowest of EU or Ontario regulation, and we continue to be in that. We do tend to continue to look at technologies and look at testing improvements. That's led to refinements in testing protocols over time, especially with the source test. But at the end of the day, I think we do hold up against worldwide reporting, and we do have continue to have relatively low limits compared to relatively low levels of emissions during the testing that we're doing.
Okay. The last question, and again, I say this respectfully, why do we consider it acceptable for MESA reports to simply say, sorry, our testing equipment was broken, so we didn't do a test that month? How is that acceptable? How is that, in any standard, how is that acceptable?
So again, as an operating parameter, failures do occur. Again, these systems aren't common. Ultimately, I think to diagnose and repair the system, it required bringing in a technician from Germany to complete the diagnosis and repairs after it was attempted remotely and several components had failed. In some cases, that's won't be detected until the end of the month. The MESA equipment failure is relatively infrequent. The other aspect of this is there's specific sampling procedures, in terms of how the sample is taken versus stat conditions that should be met. And given the MESA system is sort of, in some cases, in some extent, added on to the back of the system, it has some ability to move with the plant, but in some cases, things happen in the MESA system, then samples when it shouldn't be. It samples outside, or not shouldn't be. It's sampling outside of the limits of where of what would be considered to have the valid sample. That's where we invalidate the data. It's not that we see a high level, therefore it's invalidated. We see a high level, we go through to see what happened and if the system was able to take that sample appropriately. And if it's not, that's when we look at validating the data point.
Just again for further clarification, when furans and dioxins come out of the stack, and we know they come out of the stack, they don't simply melt and disappear. They accumulate initially in the air, but eventually on the ground due to gravity.
Correct.
And then they don't go away. They accumulate year after year after year to ever higher levels.
Correct.
Okay. Given that our testing as a ratio has exceeded our projection, why aren't we doing additional testing outside those parameters to look at how far is this exceedance expanded? It could be 10 feet, it could be 2 miles. Why aren't we testing to see what the extent of the exceedance is?
So I think the other aspect here is there's also questions of where the source is. These are ambient conditions. There are several other large emitters of dioxins and furans within the region and within the local area, as has been reported on previously. When you look at soil testing, you tend to look at like long-term trends. We haven't seen that trend yet. We certainly can look at additional testing. However, we wouldn't have background data in a lot of cases. So was elevated levels there previously, or are they new? And that's where you start to run into challenges without having an appropriate background set. That sampling location is picked specifically because it is modeled as being the worst case situation. And that's conservative in that
To be
extent.
fair, it was modeled as being projected to be the worst case scenario in 2009. We don't know it's the worst case now because we haven't tested beyond that site.
So when
All we've done is the 2 sites. We don't know how far it's extended beyond that. Would that be a fair statement?
So when monitoring stations are approved, it's based on, you're correct, it's based on the modeling from where prevailing conditions would yield the highest level deposition. I think you're asking, could there be another case, another location that is worse? Theoretically, there could be, but of the receptor grid modeled, that is what should be, under the prevailing conditions.
Okay, well,
The
let
worst
me
case.
put this to you then. Given that reasonable concerns have been raised, and then we can debate the overall impact or not, would it not be prudent for us to do at least a soil test in some of the residential communities that are downwind from this site, just to see if there's any matters of concern that we need to address? If we do the test and it comes back there's not a problem, then we have some assurance. Right now, we just don't know. Would that be a fair statement? We just don't know if there's a problem with dioxin and furans in the downwind in the residential communities.
So certainly we don't know what, without a measurement in various communities, we don't know what the current levels would be. Even if we were to go out and do sampling, there would be questions, there would be significant questions as to the source, especially as you get closer to other point sources. And you'd have to rely on, in some cases, their modeling to see what their impacts are on the community as well. But yeah, to your point, yes, you don't know if you don't take a sample.
Well, see, my concern, and I'll lay it on the table to make cards out there, is that if we're the only source, we can address that. If there are other sources of furans and dioxins, then we need to address that as well. And we have the joint cumulative impact of both sources. What the residents need to know is there anything in the land where they situate that is of concern? Whether the source is the Durham American Energy Center, whether the source is somewhere else, is it not our responsibility as one of the potential source contaminant sites to at least understand what the status is for further downwind sites? I mean, we test virtually everything in the region. We test our roads, we test our sewers, we seem to do every level of test beyond the minimum because we want to be assured that we're not causing a negative impact. So my concern is, why don't we apply that same standard that we apply to roads and sewers to the energy waste facility? Why aren't we saying we want the highest and best testing and we want to know if there's an issue beyond our standard review? Because it appears our projections from 2009 were a bit on the low side. That may be just a minor adjustment, or it may be a major problem. But if we don't test, we'll never know. And that's just my only concern. I've got 40,000 residents who like to know, are we having any negative impacts whatsoever from this facility? I can't assure them that we don't because we haven't tested them. I can say, as far as this location, that's okay, but beyond that, I have no idea. And that's just my concern I put to you is that, shouldn't we be cautionary? Shouldn't we be taking the next step to ensure that we're okay rather than saying we're assuming that we're okay? That's just the question I put you, Mr. Chair. And I'll deal with the debate later, but I just wanted to ask those questions, and I appreciate the answers.
Yeah, thanks. And again, I made an error as chair. I should have stopped you at 5 minutes, and I think you went 15 or so. So we'll
Questions?
just,
We don't time questions.
I think we do.
No, change the rules.
We don't? Oh. Okay, fair enough. Then, good. My left ear told me I was in trouble.
Okay,
I
no
try
problem.
to behave, which
You're allowed,
is,
Mr. Chair. We trust you.
okay. All right, so next we've got Councillor Marin Pietri. Go ahead, Tito.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I just have a couple questions, and then I'd like to make some remarks about the matter. Just wondering, with the increased proposal from 140 to 160, if staff could answer what the current status is, because I just don't want us getting into a situation where we're missing anything or, getting ahead of ourselves. Just wondering through you if we could have staff comment on that.
Do you want it to be you or Andrew? Your call. Andrew, go ahead.
Certainly. So, like any other major environmental project, there's two steps: environmental assessment process and environmental compliance approval process. So in this instance, how the Environmental Assessment Act applied is a screening process. That screening process was completed and submitted to the ministry in 2020, early 2022. There was elevation requests received, and the ministry recently made a decision to deny those elevation requests, which would allow us to move forward to the permit application stage, so the ECA application stage. So right now, we haven't really, commenced work on that ECA application yet. There is some additional modeling to be done and some additional consultation with Clarington that we committed to as part of the screening process. But that would be, the next step would be doing the permit application and supporting modeling before submitting to the ministry.
Okay. And so in comparisons to what the alternative, technologies would be or methods, could you expand on that through you, Mr. Chair? If this does not, because I'm going to get into some comments afterwards, but I just wonder if this does not move forward, what are the alternatives?
So if the permit amendment doesn't proceed,
Yeah.
The facility would continue operating as is, which is and one of the driving factors in this is that as waste energy content changes, and as we've seen how the plant operates in more detail since its inception, currently we shut off one boiler, or in some cases both boilers, towards the end of the year to ensure we're staying under the permit limit. And when we're not able to process material, be it there's too much produced in the system or we're at capacity, that material gets transferred via bypass to another landfill outside the region.
So in comparisons to other disposal, measures or mechanisms, how does this compare?
So we did a life cycle analysis initially to support the facility. It's better from a carbon perspective, and also the financial analysis. It's better to the region. We get a discounted rate from the operator beyond 140,000 tons. We continue to receive power and metal revenue, and we avoid the cost of bypass.
Okay. All right. And how does this affect our recycling efforts?
It really doesn't. We continue to put forward diversion programs. July 1st and July 2nd is a big change for us in terms of both the organics and the recycling. In some cases, it can almost be viewed, in some jurisdictions, I think, they've got a landfill, they can use that capacity at whatever rate. Having kind of that firm number that we have has, I think, given us sort of a thing to say, okay, how can we delay an expansion as far as possible, in terms of a major capital expansion. So it does give that limit. So you really, there is no impacts to our diversion programs, and we continue to look to grow those programs to offset growth within the region.
Okay, I appreciate those answers. I just wanted to ask one further. I'm not sure who can address it because this is more of a policy answer. Relative to how we, initiated this process, and I say we, the region, it was based on us, respecting the provincial legislations that required us to take care of our own waste, so to speak. That policy, is it still something that we refer to? Is it one that's enforced? What is the situation, relative to the policy that was enacted for us or other municipalities across the province to take care of their own waste? And how do we meet that? How do we meet that?
Yeah, through the chair to the council, a couple of points to make in terms of, yeah, we are bound by the regulations by the province, which is what the ECA is all about.
They still exist.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of, we are also governed by our own bylaws, like which prohibits any new landfill sites in Durham. This, I think, is 1999. So we got only three alternatives.
Yes.
One, what we are doing, which is the DYEC.
One.
The other one is landfills, which is not an alternative. The third one is more diversion, and we are trying to, like, we are at about 63%, I think, which is one of the highest, I'm told. Andrew can validate, in Ontario in terms of diversion. With the enhanced green bin programs, we are hoping to get even more, inching closer to 70, which is the target. And 70 is quite ambitious now, because when we set the target, there was a lot more digital media and so on. I mean, a lot more paper media, which is all converted to digital. So your denominator is not the same. I hope I
Yes.
had an
that
answer
is-
somewhere there. Thank you.
Indeed. So to both the director and the commissioner, thank you for the answers through you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering if I could comment on the matter, or would you like to go through to questions and have us comment? I'm just afraid that there could be like a referral or another motion that comes up which precludes others from commenting. So I'll leave it in your hands.
So we can debate on a referral
Okay.
today, so.
All right, so I'll leave any further questions to members of the committee, and then if you could recognize me, I'd just like to comment, not in closing, but just in general regarding the situation that is before us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we've got Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chair Barton. Just a couple of quick questions, and I'm not sure if this is for Ramesh or for Andrew, and if you can speak to this before we get into debate, so I have an understanding. On page 2 of the letter from Clarington, there's a comment that the DYEC monitoring surveillance is not keeping up with other jurisdictions, and that in the host community agreement, section 3.2, Durham shall ensure that the EFW facility maximizes achievable control. Can you comment that, is that factual? Are we lagging behind, or is this a perception that we're not meeting, we're not keeping up with our agreement with the other jurisdictions, just for clarity?
Yeah, through the chair to the councillor, like, it is my honest opinion based on all the reports I've managed to gather, and I've met with some experts within the last couple of months, and I've had a tour of the plant as well. We are as state-of-the-art as reasonably we can as at this point. Does this mean there's not better technologies and so on? Like we always are looking out for better ways to do it, and if there's any better technology that we become aware of, regardless of the cost, we'll come back to this committee, and we will continue to explore better technologies. But as of now, I'm quite convinced we have quite state of the art. It's only 8 years old. It's not like an old facility in the grand scheme of things. It's 7 to 8 years old in operation, and
Okay, so you've had plenty of time. Let's just keep with Councillor Cook. Go ahead.
Just one further question, again with Ramesh. You made a comment when addressing Councillor Nicholson's questions. You noted, and hopefully I'm quoting you correctly, that there was noted higher levels, I'm assuming of dioxin and furan, than the previous 3-year report in the current report that came before us. Can you give this committee an overview of what the plan is to address the increasing levels? If we're seeing an increase year over year or from 0 year to year 3, is there a plan in place to address the rising increases? Or is that an Andrew question?
And Andrew, before you answer, can you just to make sure it's not I want to make sure we're talking about the AMISA or the soil, just confirm which way you're going.
I believe the question is regard to soil.
Correct.
So certainly we've seen one higher level at this point. Again, with soils, given the again the fluctuations that you can see year to year within the sampling, and if you look at the soil report data, you'll see a fluctuation in the past as well, even at the baseline level. So we will continue to monitor it with our monitoring. We are still well below what would be considered the soil standard for Ontario, but to the point, we'll certainly continue to look to see if this is going, if this is in fact a one-off, or if it is, does become a trend.
Okay, subsequent question to that. At what point then would you take action? We're going to continue to monitor. We're going to continue to monitor. What's the trigger for action to clean up before it becomes too late?
So I think seeing continually increasing soils, I would probably like to see something also, out of the plant that would support that the plant could be a significant source.
Okay.
When we see our ambient air data, when we see our source test results, and really when we see our MESA data with many months that are fine, it doesn't really support necessarily that it's from the EFW facility. Again, there are some larger emitters in the area. But I think at this point it's a continue to monitor, and then any contingency plans would be developed and implemented if we started to see things on a continued basis moving forward. Likely we'd be doing that in consultation with support from the ministry, especially looking at over a wider area. But at this point, at this point, we really have no firm plans to move forward.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Chair.
Okay, just along those same lines about the soil testing, Andrew. Yeah, we had a very significant forest fire year last year. Could that have impacted this soil with the testing? Because we had smoke all over North America.
Potentially. We also had the large police fire a couple of years ago as well, which would be in the period. To what level, I probably couldn't comment on without some further data, but we certainly did see ambient air quality degraded during that time. But I wouldn't want to say conclusively that would be a major contributor without further data.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we've got Councillor Yamada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a referral motion that I've sent to the clerk, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, we'll get it up on the screen. We have another speaker before the referral, or is the referrals always in order? Okay.
So basically what we're looking for here is a staff report that encapsulates what is being asked through items A through G in the correspondence that was submitted by the municipality of Clarington.
Okay, and then I'm going to pass to Ramesh for 1 second. I think he was planning to already do that report. So just making sure that we need this motion or not, because I think this was already coming. Go ahead.
Yeah, we were already planning to do this. I think this is specifying that we don't do the ECA application prior to that.
Well, and just to have it formalized, if it's already coming, then this should be a no-brainer. Thank you.
Okay, do you want to, this is before the ECA though, is what you're asking for? So, okay, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, well, basically it's a direction to not proceed with an application until you see the report, and if that's the direction, that's what we'll take. Thank you.
Okay, so next we've got Councillor Mulcahy. Okay, so we had someone on the speakers list before the referral. I'm just clerks. Okay, just a second. Thank you. Who's first? Okay. My left ear has told me that it's you. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, no, I just want us to be consistent that we usually allow the mover and seconder to speak in favor of their motion before we allow others to debate on the motion. So my concern, and I mean, this is the bare minimum we should be doing, and I'm glad staff were planning to do it anyway. That's a good step. But I just wonder if staff could just answer one question that popped into my head. How much does it cost to do a soil sample? I'm assuming you go down, you take some soil out of the ground, you send it to a lab, they test it, they give you the results. What would a soil sample test cost?
So there's also an establishment of a sampling grid. The analysis of itself, I can't, say off the top of my head. But it would be in the ballpark range of hundreds to $1,000 type range. I would expect if you're doing all the parameters, DNF would be one of the more significant.
Right,
cost
so
items.
we're not talking massive millions or anything. It's just a testing protocol to make sure that we're okay.
Right. So if we're, and again, if it's a one-off sample versus establishing a soil sampling site and amending the plan with the ministry, there's some consulting time that would be in there as well. But if it's a one-off or a repeat sample, relatively low dollar value item.
Well, the reason I'm asking that, and I think this is something that should be included in the report, when we get a test and it comes beyond our expectation, say we were expecting it at a certain level and it came higher, the first question, and I think quite honestly, staff asks, is it a one-off or is it not? So the question I'm putting is, why are we waiting 3 years to test to see whether it's a one-off? Or why wouldn't we say, okay, we've got an exceedance. Let's see if it's just a sampling error. We just want to see if it's a one-day error. Why wouldn't we go out almost immediately and do another test to make sure that we get a second look at the same site? And if we get the same exceedance, now we've got some factual data we can deal with. If we get a lesser level, then we can address it then. Why wouldn't we do it as a matter of protocol? Every time we get an exceedance, go and do a secondary test to make sure that that's not just a one-off.
So certainly we haven't seen exceedance of the standard
now.
at this, no, not of the standard at this location. You're saying of our predicted model, that wouldn't be considered an exceedance, at least to our standard terminology. You're saying above expectations.
Yeah.
That normally wouldn't trigger a resampling, be it landfill. I can probably look to Mike on some of our water plants, wells. A higher level could which could or could not indicate a future trend, wouldn't necessarily be grounds for a retesting.
But again, you're talking about what's mandatory. I'm asking you, wouldn't it be prudent, given that we've had a figure of 2.4, we were expecting a figure of less than 2, wouldn't it be prudent to go out and do another test just to make sure that that 2.4 was not just a one-off? That if it's an ongoing trend, then we may have to amend the protocols. If it's not, maybe the current protocols are okay. But we won't know for another 3 years based on our standard protocol testing. Why not do it now?
If that's the direction of
That's
council,
all I
we
want to
certainly
know.
could.
Is it's something we could do if council so directed?
Okay, before you answer, Ramesh, jump in.
Sorry.
In the soil testing report, I believe like we did do a resampling, and that came at about half, like the one.
No, so there was a duplicate sample taken as part of laboratory QA/QC that was taken at the same time at the other location. That's the one that came back half of the other value.
Yeah, and you raised an important point. You always have to have it's like doing a blood test. They test half your blood and they keep the other half behind just to make sure there wasn't an error. And if there's an error, they test the second sample. My concern is that it's like a medical protocol. If my doctor says, we did a test, we think you got high cholesterol, he's not going to take that at face value. He's going to say, let's do another test to make sure that we're right, that you do have high cholesterol. They don't say, well, go away, come back in 3 years, we'll test and see if there's a problem, because they can't wait that long if they have to address it. So what I'm suggesting is being a prudent management of a facility. When we get an exceedance, using the terminology, we go back and retest. When we get an identified overage, won't use the word exceedance, because that's a legal term, is it not prudent for us to go back and say, hey, is this a one-off, or is this an indicator that we have a problem that we're going to have to address? So that's the only thing I think that most people are asking for is, nothing, you never go wrong with a double check. But you can't make the statement that everything is okay based on one test. My doctor wouldn't do it on my cholesterol. I can't say, well, I'm diabetic. I can't say, well, I did a blood test and one day I was low, so therefore I don't have to worry about diabetes for the rest of my life because one day it was okay. No, I have to go back and check it on a regular basis to make sure that parameters don't change. My question is, why don't we put the same standard into emissions from facilities, because the reality is this is a health issue. This is not an operations issue. This is not a profit generation issue. When we're talking about pollutants entering the atmosphere and then eventually settling in the ground, it's a public health issue. And the standard for public health is different than the standard for operations. And I guess the question I'm putting here is, shouldn't we be making our protocols based on not the engineering, but is it safe? And if we can prove that it's safe, fine. But you got to do the testing to make that statement. And I'm not sure we're doing sufficient testing and sufficient follow-up that we can make the absolute statement that everything is safe. So that's why I support this motion. I think it's standard. And again, when one of our host communities says they have concerns, it's incumbent upon us as a committee and council to take that seriously and address their concerns. And I think I can make the argument Oshawa could almost identically make the same request because we're the other half of the area that's getting dumped on. You know, there's no plastic wall at the corner of Town Line Road in Clarington that stops everything coming from the east, not crossing into our boundary. It lands in our neighborhoods too. And all we want to be sure is to go back to our residents and say, as they do in Clarington, that we are confident that the appropriate protocols are in place and the appropriate testing is capturing the true situation. Respectfully, I'm not sure I can make that statement right now. And I'm hoping to in the near future. Thank you.
I'll just make one last comment, perhaps. So at some point in time, we did some modeling and we predicted this is what we're going to find in the soil data, like a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, and so on. We do the testing now, we get a certain data point. I think like it doesn't matter how it compares to the modeled or projected information a few years earlier. What it matters now is it below our compliance limit? And secondary to the part is the trend. I don't think we are there yet. Like, sure, we can do another test, but I don't think it should be to the purpose of validating what we projected a few years ago. It should be again to confirm that it's below the compliance limit. If that's the purpose, I think it serves the purpose. Otherwise, I'm not sure what's the relevance of trying to compare it with something that we projected earlier on. The fact is it compliant today or not?
Okay. With respect.
So you are out of time, just so you're aware.
Well, I appreciate his answer. He jumped in after me, so my only concern to explain is the standards in 2009 were established in 2009. Even the ministry standards have changed since then, but our standards haven't. So I'm just saying, to say you're under a compliance level, it's an argumentative situation as to what standard we want to accept. When we built the incinerator, we didn't say we're going to make the minimum standards approved by the Ministry of Environment. We said we're going to exceed those standards and do the state of the art. So we can't use the ministry as a defense now as why we're no longer state of the art.
Okay, next we've got Councillor Mackay. Go ahead, Rhonda.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hit the button again? Thanks.
There I'm on, thank you. Through you, Chair. I was going to speak to the main motion, but this is actually including items A through G, and so I guess it's, relevant. I have no problem supporting this because I do feel that more information is always better than less. However, I do have a question about item C in the letter, asking for Dr. Kyle's recommendations on improvements to the monitoring plans. Well, Dr. Kyle is highly intelligent. He's not an engineer in testing facilities. So I'm sure he will be able to tell us the impacts of the dioxins on the female reproductive system very clearly. So, but who do we know if Clarington is intending for some sort of engineering outside recommendations on improvements? Like, it's kind of vague as to what the intention is here.
Yeah, through the chair to Counselor. I did get a chance to have a quick conversation with Dr. Kyle, given he has much longer history than certainly me and even probably some of my predecessors. Like, he has acknowledged that the MECP guidelines are developed in keeping with the prevention of health impacts. He confirmed he's had limited role in the evolution of the DYEC in the past. And again, he deferred, again, he defers to the MECP for their approval role, but he did remind me, and if I can describe, I did have this response from him. In response to a specific delegation in 2011, I gather, he did engage and consult with a doctor, like Dr. Lesbia Smith, and where they did conduct a detailed assessment of the human health risks. And based on that conclusion, operating as specified in those reports, like, you know, he took the message that it's unlikely to cause any significant impacts to human health and so on. And I can check again. He doesn't think it's his role to get deep dive into this. But again, that's what I gathered from him.
Okay, so I guess there's a couple of red flags for me there. That's 13 years, right? So since he's had that consultation, so I think perhaps, you know, the industry experts might be somebody that, you know, like, if he could reach out again, I think I would feel more comfortable if he had that conversation again with the industry experts. We've also had such fast technology improvements globally in engineering and testing. And I think it's really important that, you know, we're asking a doctor essentially to look at engineering, and you know, it's not a fair thing to ask of him, but perhaps in his consultations he might run across other doctors that have had that experience with the testing. And I just think it's an update. It's due diligence, and I really I'm a little concerned about their wording, because they're asking for him to comment on technology that perhaps is out of his field. But, you know, I'm hoping that can be taken as a friendly with this motion, that, you know, we're not expecting him to comment on technology outside of his field, but perhaps there's somebody that in his field that has that sort of connection. So
Yeah, obviously, like, you know, I'm not as connected with Dr. Kyle. Like, you know, I'll see if our CEO has any comments on the role that he can play in this, please.
Yes, I think Dr. Kyle could access whatever expertise he needs. There are also scientists within the public health department. So I think if you leave it to staff, we'd be able to look at what we can reasonably expect from public health and what we would have to get from another party.
okay, thank you. Good, thank you.
Okay, next we're on to Councillor Manfield.
Mr. Chair, thanks. I appreciate the motion. I did hear from staff, as well as asked a number of times how we would be proceeding. And I think I get a comfort in the sense that this is a matter that we're going to be reporting on. And what you know, I think it's necessary for us to take a look at ensuring that steps aren't duplicated and that due process is moved forward with. One of the things that I just wanted to highlight, aside from, you know, commenting on this particular motion, is just overall, I'll remind council and staff, I think I'm the only person in the room, unless there's someone on the works department, that actually worked at an incinerator. And at the time when we were discussing this, because I don't recall voting in its favor, we were talking about different technologies. We were also talking about capacity. And the biggest issue that I had was that we weren't being, I think, as forthright and as in exercising as much foresight as I thought we should have. We knew we were going to be, you know, asking for an expansion of capacity at the time. At least we should have. And I'll just say we, and you can, you know, highlight me. I thought it was common sense for us just to go to maximum capacity, whether someone was in favor of the technology or not. And I wasn't, because I thought that there were better technologies. We heard from the commissioner that there are a number of different, you know, elements that we have to consider. The provincial policy, we can't evade that. Then we have to consider whether or not the discussion for a landfill or other means to be able to dispose of this within our community is something that council wants to activate. Staff employ the policies and the regulations and the sort of projects and initiatives that council moves forward with. One of them, obviously, is this. So if there are any council members around the table here at the committee or on council who wishes to open the debate, I'd be very surprised. And having expended the kind of money that we have to invest in this technology, which, you know, it is an older technology, but it's one that at the time offered us this capacity. We didn't choose to go to it. And now we're in this discussion. So having noted that, we also have a diversion system that we're working on, and you know, it's not perfect, but I think actively trying to get to the diversion numbers that are needed to be able to depend less on this. But the population's growing and the needs are growing. So unless we're willing to meet, you know, those realities with a completely separate set of understandings and realities, I think we're in a position where we need to advance this this proposal or this initiative by meeting the reality that I think we should have met many years ago. Regardless of whether someone was in favor or against it, I think that the understanding of having everything on the table at the time would have been much more intelligent than to have to go through the debate again, because we're ultimately in the same sort of situation, aside from maybe, you know, activating the entire project. This is just an expansion of it, and I think that it's important for us to recognize that whatever provincial measure that we require, whatever the ministry intends and legislates, and I hope that you know, staff would go above and beyond to try to satisfy in that report that's going to come forward the justification for this. Because if that report comes forward and it spells that it's not a justified initiative, council is going to have to think twice about moving forward with it. But if it is, then council needs to consider what the alternatives are, and if they're willing to undertake any sort of discussion, let alone you know, the advancement of those discussions, which lead to an entire separate debate. And I think that that reality is one that I am aware of, and that, you know, I consider when moving forward with the initiatives that staff present, in particular this one here.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question along the same realm, if you don't mind. Can you explain what we're doing right now with shutdowns to meet the 140,000 tons and what we're going to do differently if we go to 160,000 tons? I'm talking more maybe a little less scientific, more about like how many days we're shut down to meet 140 and how many days we'll operate to meet 160.
So firstly, saying meeting 160 is probably the wrong way of looking at it. We're just seeking to, when there's additional plant capacity available, to make use of it so that we're not artificially capped. You know, in terms of shutdowns, you know, so the plant availability, you know, is assumed to be 88 to 90%, with shutdowns both planned and unplanned, and that will still exist. The amount of waste that goes through the facility, probably an oversimplification, you know, is largely regulated by how much steam is produced by that waste in the boilers, which is kind of driven by what's in the waste. So single-use plastics, for example, mean that you're producing more steam with less waste. Therefore, you need to put less waste through the system to fully utilize that boiler. So what we have right now is, you know, there's periods of the year when the facility is fully utilized, which is, you know, roughly end of March through to beginning of December. And then there's periods where the facility isn't fully utilized. So, you know, January, February, just low waste. We call it low waste season, and a little bit into December. So as the region grows, we may be able to fully utilize those periods. We'll still have to bypass material during peak seasons. And then the other aspect, of course, is, you know, right now we shut down, you know, for whatever period towards the end of the year, and we certainly look at, you know, adjusting the boiler operation level ahead of that to try and minimize that shutdown period. So really, you know, from we look at it, we're just trying to make full use of the asset. There's the financial upside there. We believe we can do it without, any impacts to the natural environment. And that's sort of the basis of moving forward. So apologies if I got a little technical there, but to the point. So when are we bypassing? So during shutdown, we bypass if it can't be stored. We do look at drawing down the pit and storing some. When there's more waste in the system than the plant can handle, we bypass as well. And it's just looking at how we can optimize that system moving forward to process as much through the facility as we can. It's not about pushing as much waste through the facility as is out there. It's looking just at optimizing the use.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Nicholson has his hand up. Is it in order for him to speak again? Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to chalk up a lot of the answers about what happened in 2009 to the fact that most people were not around in 2009 during that analysis and that debate. Some of the statements made are just not accurate. The reason that 140,000 was limited was a SOP to Clarington to get their support politically. By putting an artificial cap and not going to full capacity, the council today was basically saying to Clarington, we are not going to use full capacity, therefore we want your support. I won't mention the fact that all the Clarington councillors that voted for the incinerator all lost their seats the next election, but that's kind of a sidebar. 13 members of the regional council out of 28 voted against even having this facility, despite all the projections. Most of the others voted in favor because they were given assurances that we would have the state-of-the-art testing system, we would adapt our protocols on a regular basis to make sure that we're not causing a health hazard to anybody, that we'd be able to document the lack of a health impact to the community. Dr. Kyle, quite rightly so, in 2011, reached out to the community, the medical community, and to get information from experts on, is this something he should be concerned about as a medical officer of health? And I appreciate Ramesh's information because he said basically what he said in 2011. Based on the projections we have now, we don't project a health issue. But now that our standards and our output, for a better word, is exceeding and is larger than we were projecting in 2011, it is prudent to simply ask our medical officer of health, does he have any health concerns based on this new information and new data? I would think, as members of council who rely on Dr. Kyle's expertise, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not going to tell somebody that it's a threat or not a threat. We need an assurance from our medical officer of health that he continues to have no major concern based on the information that we've received since 2011 to 2024. And I would think all our staff probably want the same thing. They just want to be assured that they were okay. So I don't think it's imprudent for Clarington to ask, for him to take another look at what he stated in 2011 and say, is this still your position? Or do you have some amendments you want to suggest to us? It's the same we would ask of our engineers. What you suggested was the best way to design a widget in 2011 may not be the best time to design a widget in 2024. Technology may have changed. It is prudent for a council and for our staff to always continuously monitor what we've approved to make sure that we're still meeting our expectations and our standards that we promised. I believe this is all what Clarington is asking for. It's all what I think members of the committee are asking for. Is, okay, 15 years since approval, since the standards were established, since the promises were made. Surely after 15 years, we want to go and double check everything and make sure, are we still on course? Are we still meeting the expectations that we expected back then? Or do we have to modify some of our approaches? Especially when we're asking to add capacity to the facility. Now we can use the words, we're maximizing capacity by going from 140 to 160. Well, we had the capacity at 160 back in 2009. We didn't approve it then. So we are changing rules. We're saying the cap we put on is now being removed. And all I think anybody in this process is asking is that if we're going to consider that, and council still has many decisions to make on that, but if we're going to consider that, can we be assured that we can tell to our residents and tell to the people in the community that these changes will not have a negative impact on their life or on their health or on their operations? If we don't have sufficient testing to confirm that, then it allows people to make the argument, well, don't expand it because you don't know. So to put it simply, in the vernacular, if you want my vote to expand, prove to me you're not harming me. It's like a do no harm scenario in medicine. Prove to me you're not doing any harm. Because I remember the debate in 2009. I remember staff and councillors both saying the only thing that's coming out of that stack is water vapor. And you go back and look at the minutes. You go back and look at the reports. There is a documented statement in there that the only thing that's coming out of the top of that stack is water vapor. Well, we know differently today. Yes, there's water vapor, but there's a whole bunch of other chemicals, and there's furans, and and these are poisons. Not my word. I didn't decide that furon's a poison. The health community said furon's a poison. So the question comes down is not whether or not poisons are being released, but to what level. This is not about replacing landfill. This is not about technology. This is not about everything except this motion is simply about testing. All Clarington is asking for in their request is assure us through appropriate testing that our concerns are addressed. And I would hope that this should be supported by a unanimous vote, not of this committee, but also the council. Because it's our responsibility as elected officials to put the health of our community absolutely first and foremost in every decision we make. And at the end of the day, if we do appropriate extended testing, and we can then confirm that this is not something that people should be concerned about, then we're doing a real service to our community by having that information. But if we refuse to do that extended testing, if we refuse to meet those standards, then we leave this large gray cloud, pardon the pun, hanging over our communities where we can't say to them, we don't know because we didn't test. I think it's incumbent upon us to test, to make sure that we can make that statement. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. Andrew, question from me to you. Why are we doing daily soil testing around the DYEC?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. Again, right now we're doing testing, yearly or every 3 years. Why aren't we doing it daily? Wouldn't that be better?
I mean, level of effort versus level of data coming back. The timelines to see accumulations. Better is a pretty relative term. I don't think it's necessary.
So what would happen if we did 365 tests a year on soil, what would the results be? Would they change from day to day?
Presumably, it would look like a scatter plot a little bit. I would expect to see variation. By the time you also remove that so much of that soil media, you're also kind of disrupting the sampling location, which can be disturbed at times by other activities as well.
So before you keep going, so is more testing always better? Or do you end up with skewed results where the noise disrupts the data?
More sampling, more data. There's never an issue with more data. Whether that data is at a significant level to increase confidence in results, or just provide information. It comes back to level of effort. So to go back to plant sensors, there's sensors in the plant that take measurements every second, but they're not necessarily looked at every second. They're averaged over minutes to hours to look for, again, trends. So more useful data is always better, but you do have to look at sort of what cost and what value does that data provide.
Okay. And then just an additional question. Now we're talking about the AMISA data. When we got close to the limit in August to September, you know, that data came in higher than expected, higher than what we had seen. You know, you've got a projection, runs like this, and it pops up. Again, because we look at it monthly, we said, oh, there's an issue. What happened internally at the plant?
Nothing that we could see at that point. You know, they did, I think we, you know, even though it wasn't above the threshold to really conduct that detailed look, we told them to go out and take that look anyway, as kind of whenever we see something we don't expect.
Right.
You know, didn't see anything. None of the other readings showed any potential issues. So again, looking at, you know, relative accuracy of that sampling system, it kind of has to be taken with a grain of salt, and it's spelled out within the ECA that EMISA system is really, you know, long-term trend in APC function. So, you know, it is looking for trends. And then does the fact that system had some issues a few months later play a role in looking at it? Certainly could be a contributing factor, not necessarily saying that, you know, it's 100% the cause. But, you know, we looked, the operator looked, don't see any particular thing that you could point to as being the cause of the issue. So, you know, all else being equal, you sort of have to assume things are operating as intended.
Okay. And just like, and then the next month you look at the data and it's back to normal again, right?
Yeah. So, you know, good indication that, you know, may have just been, you know, been a one-off, been data variation. Certainly if you saw, you know, a second high one, you know, closer look again, you know, you could go so far as to apply, you know, there's Six Sigma statistical process control methods. You know, we're not at that level yet. We sort of treat, you know, we treat each one off seriously, but it's, you know, it's looking at it to see, is there something that we need to be doing with the plant? And, you know, not seeing that at this point, you know, for the most part, we understand something's happened to upset the plant and the system more than the plant, I guess. And that's, you know, that's analyzed and, you know, kind of note made. And then we go on to the next month to see if things are back to normal or if there's other things we need to be looking at.
Okay. And thanks. And I see that very much like if I'm driving home tonight and the service engine soon light on my truck turns on, I might pull over, take off my gas cap, put it back on. And if it doesn't turn off the service engine soon light, it might come off tomorrow. And if it's on for 3 days in a row, I'll take it to the mechanic. That's just my, the technology, the way a mayor might understand it. So,
Not a terrible analogy.
okay. Ramesh has a comment.
And thanks for the latitude. I just wanted to clarify, because I remember being in the chambers of the meeting when Cliff Curtis made that reference to water vapor. I think what he meant was it just looks like water vapor. Like, I think he was talking about the appearance, and I was not part of this, any of this, but I remember that. I just wanted to clarify that. One last comment I would make is the 140 to 160, we often would like to have the powers within this council where we can help, as opposed to leaving it to the mercy of the province. We could always proceed with the EC application and get approval, but we could make a condition this council has to wait for Dr. Kyle's studies or whatever, like the pending things that we want to have comfort on. I'm just offering that as an option to keep moving, because we started this journey about 3 years ago. And after 3 years, they've considered all our elevation requests and basically said they have no objection to go with an EC application. I'll just leave that as a thought. Obviously, staff is at the will of council and committee, but I just wanted to make sure that I had that opportunity to say that. Thank you.
Okay. Now we have one last speaker, Councilor Yamana.
I'd like a recorded vote at the appropriate time, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, there's no one else on the speakers list. I think a recorded vote now is in order. On the amendment.
It's not an amendment.
Oh, so it's on the main motion because, yeah, just wasn't a recommended staff. Okay. You can vote now. If I voted? Who are we missing? Oh, okay. Okay. All right, that's carried. All right, we have next on the agenda, we have item 7.1B. This is again correspondence from Clarington, and this is in regards to a Mesa monitoring, and reporting. What would we like to do with this? Motion to receive. Wait, just a second. Motion. Tito, go ahead. Do you want to push a button, or just motion to receive by Councillor Pietri, seconded by Councillor Cook? Of course. Just give me one sec. Go ahead.
So my understanding in the motion that was moved and approved just previous, that it related to the correspondence, did it not?
Only 7.1A.
So now, what was the sense of having that motion if the entire correspondence wasn't dealt with? That's my point in not voting for it.
So that referral motion was with respect to 7.1A and that first item of correspondence from the municipality of Clarington. There is now a second letter from the municipality of Clarington with A to C. That also needs to be dealt with.
Okay, let me get this straight. So staff indicated through you, Mr. Chair, that they would be doing a report, correct? But we still had a motion to say do a report previous.
Yeah.
Okay, so just so you know, that's why I wasn't voting for it. Now we're citing that there's, you know, further elements within the correspondence that need to be referred to that report. You see what I mean? Like, I think that this becomes, it would have been easier to not do the motion and have this correspondence referred to the staff report so that you had the entirety, not 7.1, not 7A or AC or, so anyways, I just wanted to make that point. And I think we got to be careful when we make motions because now, for example, if a committee doesn't support having that correspondence go to that report, you may lose things that would have otherwise gone there by simply referring that to the report that staff are going to be putting together anyways.
I agree. I'm hearing that there's other councillors around the table that would like this referred to that staff report we've already asked for. I agree. So just to make this really simple, why don't we, if you're okay with that friendly amendment? Yep. Yeah. So I think I see lots of nods. Any questions or comments? We have people in the speakers list, but I think we're covered, right? Okay, we're covered with that motion? Okay, just if you withdraw your request to speak, that way my... Okay.
So through you, I guess, to staff, the items A through C that are referenced in this piece of correspondence will be added into the final report that we see. Thank you.
Will be commented on, right? Yeah. Some of what they're asking for might be thousands of pages of data that we wouldn't be able to understand anyway.
Yeah, we'll basically respond to the first correspondence and this one together in a single report.
Okay. All right. So, okay. Do you want to push a button so we can hear you? Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. For clarification, it's not on the floor yet. Because
moved.
you've
It's
asked
moved.
it
Okay.
to, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been removed. So there needs to be a motion to refer this item to that report, correct?
Yeah, so we have that motion on the floor with the friendly amendment.
This is on the floor?
Yeah.
I thought you just asked to have their,
So I believe, to clarify, the motion to receive for information was withdrawn and then
Withdrawn.
replaced as a referral by Councillor Pietri and Councillor Cook.
okay, as long as, all right. I didn't hear that part, so excuse me.
Yeah, that's, we
That's
changed,
fine.
yeah, okay. So I believe that's where everyone feels we are right now. And we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Oh, you, okay, recorded vote? And that was unanimous by all members present. Okay? All right, thank you very much for that one. Okay, now we are down to 8.2A. This is report 2024 W17. Do we want to link these together? Okay, just a second. So go ahead, Mr. Chair.
So I'll give you a motion to approve as presented reports A through E.
Sounds good. Just a second, seconded by Councillor Cook. Any polls? Polling D. All right. So all in favor of all except for D? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Now item D. Go ahead. Oh, just a second. Push a button. Thank you.
Just quicker than I am. I support the motion. First of all, I want to thank staff for taking this step. I think it's a prudent step. I know the residents on the area will appreciate it. That we're gonna tear up the bridge. Let's fix the road as well. I just want to raise a red flag just for Wilson Road. We're not only looking at the widening of the 401, therefore we have to amend the underpass, as they call it. I call it an underpass, 401 calls it an overpass, depends on your viewpoint. But further north of this bridge, Metrolinx is also making significant changes to the bridge that's just south of Olive Avenue. We have a school on one side of the road, we have a new subdivision going on the other side of the road. I'm kind of putting my card on the table that from a neighborhood point of view, because this is a residential neighborhood, if there's a way to coordinate the two bridges and the expansion of Wilson Road, please do it on one project in one calendar term rather than tearing up the same street 3 times. There's a plaza to the north whose business would be impacted. Equally so, we're looking at changes on Bloor Street to the south, and we're looking at changes on Olive Avenue to the north. This whole neighborhood is going to be under construction for the next 5 years. So anything we can do in our budgetary planning and our design parameters to coordinate the projects along the stretch of road into hopefully 1 or no more than 2 calendar years is something I think is prudent and will have a less negative impact on the neighborhoods and on the schools. So I think it comes down to the point, I just wanted to put that card on the table for staff as they're drawing up the next budget round. And they're looking at how they're coordinating with Metrolinx and MTO. Let's look big picture and get it all done rather than doing it in phases, which have not been the best way to approach in the past. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments, Ramesh? Okay. We'll take that as direction. Or we'll note that. Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. So all in favor of item D? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, now we are down to 9.1. This is correspondence from our Energy from Waste Management Advisory Committee. I believe this is covered in the motions that we've already made. Councillor Baron Pietri.
I'll give you a motion, if required, to refer that to the report as well so that no one's left out and there's no discrepancy about.
Okay, so we have a mover and seconder. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, all in favor? All right, that's carried. Thank you very much. And any other business? Councillor Nicholson?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I had a small discussion with the commissioner. We've got a concern, I want to again put these cards on the table. We've got a concern with an issue regarding the widening of the bridge as part of the Metrolinx project on the Oshawa Creek. Both the City of Oshawa's engineering staff and Central Lake Ontario engineering staff have indicated that the opening for the bridge, the rail bridge going across that area, needs to be wider because it's acting like a cork in the bottle right now. It's limiting the amount of flow down the Oshawa Creek, which I can tell you, I mean, in the Nolensy area, the flow that's coming from the north is far more today than it was 20 or 30 years ago or 40 years ago when this bridge was originally made. There's more subdivisions, there's more feeding creeks into them. We have a lot more water. The one benefit to the request was for the region to participate. And so far, regional staff have been hesitant. Maybe that's a polite word. My concern is if we widen the opening of the bridge, at a bare minimum, we're going to bring in 80 to 100 residential building lots. But the real thing that we need to talk about is by widening that structure, it's going to bring 3,200 acres of land in northeast Oshawa and beyond into opportunities for development. Some of that is housing, some of that's employment lands.
Just give me 1 second, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm just hearing from the commissioner that this might be an in-camera discussion.
Yes, I would agree, and it is something we also plan to report. Remind me, Ramesh, were we going through cover directly to council? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so staff are well aware of it. I think there's more to this story from this side of the table than, again, I'm just hearing about it now, but
I'm just giving a heads up to everybody because Save Oshawa has written to the region, and I understand that's what's coming at Cal. What I'm wanting to is make sure everyone's aware, not just that we want the bridge widened and that we believe there's a regional role, because the region's going to benefit from all this new industrial land, all this new housing through development charges and through taxes. One concern that I wanted to raise that concerned me, and again, I'm getting this from our staff, is that the perception was from the regional staff that they saw this not as a regional impacted project. And it was simply an Oshawa problem. Flooding, development opportunities, business opportunities, they are our shared responsibility between the region and Oshawa. If these lands are brought into a development, either for housing or residential apartments or industrial lands, the region will benefit tremendously from the development charges and the taxes they generate. When we talk about the paychecks and everything else, well, all I'm saying is a true partnership between the lower tier and the upper tier doesn't dump costs only one tier.
Okay, just 1 second. Let's get a comment from the chair.
Sure.
So, Chair, I have a problem with this because one is, I have only heard rumors, I have not seen any of this. Also, if this is related to land, it should be in closed session, and I have concerns about that. And I think the comments will be coming in a report, but I think the time to discuss it is when all members of council have some idea of what's going on.
I appreciate that, I really do. I was limiting my comments not to the planning process. Envision Durham sets all the planning process. What this is about is who pays for the cost of the widening the bridge.
Yeah,
So
That's all I'm
yeah,
raising at this point.
just to follow up,
Yeah.
there's a report coming from staff.
Yeah.
It'll be at the next Cal meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that knowing the report's coming, we should limit the conversation to that.
With respect to it, sir, I just found that out at 9:15 this morning.
Okay,
And it was coming to Cal. I wasn't informed, so I raised it with them to make sure they knew our concerns, that the region should fund some of that bridge expansion.
So, and why don't we have a fulsome discussion
Fine.
when there's more than one person who has a clue about what we're talking about in the room?
Yeah, and that's why I simply said I'm raising the cards on the table to
Yep.
give you a heads up.
No, you've highlighted it where we know more than we did 15 minutes ago. I just think if we continue the conversation, we might run into some issues. That's all.
That's fine.
So let's move into Cal when appropriate. Okay. Tito, did you still need to speak or are you good? Okay, just a second.
I just want to say that, you know, the commissioner obviously is going to be in touch with our commissioner. As chair of Economic and Development Services at the city, I was involved firsthand with the analytics performed to be able to justify the expansion of the bridge for economic development and obviously for environmental purposes. So just weighing in, as Councillor Nicholson indicated, and respecting the chair's and the CAO's indication that it's going to come forward in the form of a report, I just wanted to make sure that it was highlighted that as you're putting together the report to refer to our staff as well and engage them, because we don't want to get it into a prolonged debate over facts. If the facts can be included right off the bat within that report, I think then council can make a fulsome decision. because there is a massive upside to the region of Durham as a result of these numbers.
Okay, so why don't we leave it there and take that as advisement, under advisement? If that's fair?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, thank you very much. Any other business? Okay, motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Marion Pietri, seconded by Councillor Yamada. All in favor? Carried, thanks, folks.